What is going on, guys? It's Modded Warfare here. Welcome back to another PS5 jailbreak news update. So we finally now have a kernel exploit implementation for the PS5 that you can run right now on your PS5 console. And this one came out of left field a little bit. Originally, we were thinking we were going to get a implementation with the BDJ exploit chained with this kernel exploit in order to be able to, access the exploit on the PS5. And Slayer's Gorvy is still working on that. However, Spectre came out of left field here and gave us a implementation that uses a WebKit exploit to trigger the kernel exploit instead. And so because of that, this will only work up to 4.03 because the WebKit exploit was patched after 4.03. So it's still worthwhile for people on higher firmwares to wait for Slayer's Gorvy's implementation with the BDJ exploit because it wasn't patched until 5.00. Which means his implementation should work on 4.50 and 4.51 firmwares, whereas Spectre's implementation here, because it uses the WebKit, is only going to work up to 4.03. However, if you have a digital edition console, then this is great news for you because you can take advantage of this 4.03 exploit, providing you have a PS5 that's on 4.03 or lower. So that's what we've got here so far. So obviously the exploit is quite unstable at the moment. The WebKit seems to be fairly stable, but the kernel exploit's a bit unstable. So it's quite common to get crashes when trying to load the exploit, and you'll just have to reboot the PS5 and try again. So don't worry about that, that's normal. If you want to test the exploit yourself, you can absolutely do so. All you need to do is go into your network settings on your PS5, make sure you've updated to 4.03 of course. And what you want to do is head into the network settings, change your network settings, and change the DNS address to 165.227.83.145, or change the DNS address to 192.241.221.79. Once you have one of those DNS addresses added in your network settings, you can then log out and log back into your profile to clear your website data, which is weird, but that's what you have to do on the PS5, otherwise it doesn't clear properly. And then go onto the user guide, accept the security certificate, and it will take you to Aliziv's PS4 host. From there, you just hit the left trigger twice, and that will give you a URL redirector. And then the URL you want to go to is the 7-in-1 host by EchoStretch, which is the only one I've seen so far, but I'm sure there'll be other websites hosting it as well soon. So the site you want to go to is es7in1.site. Head to that website, go to the ES tab in the top left-hand corner, and you will see the 4.03 debug settings option that you can run on the PS5. And what you want to do is wait for all the text to appear. Now, it's likely going to crash at some point during the loading of the exploit, where you'll just have to reboot the PS5 and try again. However, if it works all the way to the point where it says enable debug settings, and then below that it says, RPC server triggering in 10 seconds or whatever, that's the point when you should be able to exit the browser, and you should press circle to exit the browser, not the PS button, and not options and close page, because otherwise it will panic, and the debug settings should then be enabled for you and you can access them. So that's what we've got right there. That's a quick way of loading the exploit without having to go through all the hassle of setting up the hosting files yourself from the GitHub page from Spectre, because you can do it this way as well, where you manually host it using these Python scripts, but obviously that's quite a bit involved when it comes to getting that all set up. So it's easier to just go to a site that's already hosting the exploit for you. However, I will probably do a full tutorial once I can actually get the exploit running on my system. So anyway, there we go. So of course, it's worthwhile waiting as well for the BDJ exploit. I did notice this tweet from PSX Dev, who said that basically showing after Spectre released his WebKit version, he showed here that he's also got it working with the BDJ exploit. So he's using the Blu-ray disc exploit to trigger the same kernel exploit, and you can see here in this picture he's got the debug settings running here as well. Also, Slayer's Gorvy himself has updated his implementation. He's added an untested sandbox escape, which is using the BDJ exploit. So clearly there's quite a lot happening at the moment. Everything sort of happens at once. So as things develop, I will of course update you guys more with more videos. But that's what we have so far with the BDJ exploit as well. So it probably won't be too long before we see an implementation using the BDJ exploit. which again, hopefully should work on slightly higher firmwares than 4.03, meaning 4.50 and 4.51 should be accessible. But right now it's 4.03 or lower. In fact, you do need to be on, I believe, 4.03 exactly in order for this to work. Even though this kernel exploit may work on older firmwares than 4.03, you have to bear in mind that I believe this WebKit exploit, this exploit in the WebKit only came up during an update to the WebKit, which basically added the font face set or something into the WebKit, which is some new thing that got added to the WebKit. So older versions of the WebKit don't have it, and therefore they're not vulnerable. So I believe it has to be 4.03 exactly in order to get this to work. Whereas in, you know, other situations, you might be able to use like an older firmware and still run the exploit. But in this case, it needs to be 4.03. So if you're on an older firmware than 4.03 on your PS5, you will need to update your PS5 to 4.03, which you can do with a USB drive. Again, I'll cover all that in my guide once I finally get the exploit up and running, hopefully. And I'll show you guys all of that stuff in that video, which will hopefully be coming fairly soon, if not later tonight, maybe tomorrow. But yeah, that's what we have for now. So again, we are now 2 stages out of 3 in terms of getting a full jailbreak for the PS5. Now, as I said before, to get a jailbreak on the PS5, you know, you need a 3-chain exploit. With the PS4, you only needed a 2-chain exploit. You needed a userland exploit and a kernel exploit, and that was your jailbreak. With a PS5, you need a userland exploit, a kernel exploit, and then a hypervisor exploit as well. And then you have your full jailbreak. So we have 2 out of 3. We've got our userland exploit. We've got our kernel exploit now. We just need a hypervisor exploit. So of course, that's probably going to be pretty difficult. So I don't know how long that'll take. Could be weeks, could be months, could be years. Hopefully we'll get one sooner rather than later. There is obviously hope. Fail Overflow back in November of 2021. You can see here they obtained the symmetric PS5 root keys, and they said that they obtained it through software, which would suggest that they have some kind of bypass or hypervisor exploit. They were able to bypass it somehow. So it certainly seems like it is possible. So, you know, hopefully we will get a hypervisor exploit at some point and then get a full jailbreak. But at the moment, we'll hopefully be able to do things like, obviously we can access the debug settings. That's already been confirmed. But hopefully we'll be able to do some other things, maybe FTP server or some other way to access the file system and replace files on the PS5's hard drive. So we'll just have to wait and see what's possible here with this kernel exploit, because we are in very early stages right now. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this update or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video.